Let me start by reading you the newsletter I sent out last week, because this whole thing began with a little email I received titled Upcoming Changes to Your Spotify Premium Subscription that was sent out on the 7th of November. So this is a quote from the email I got last week. Starting on your billing date in December, your subscription price will change from £11.99 a month to £12.99 a month. The price of Premium Individual is increasing so that we can invest in our product, develop new features, and continue to bring you the best experience. It's polite, professional, and yet somehow it made me pause, I write. Another price rise, but still no mention of paying artists more fairly. Side note, say they make that price increase across the board, and don't quote me on this, it might be different in each region, but Spotify have 276 million paying customers. Times that £1 increase by 12 months, that's an extra £3,312 million a year. That's $4.2 billion extra. But yes, they don't have enough income to improve the price per stream. Sorry, back to the newsletter. As a user, I've used Spotify for over a decade. It's soundtracked most of my adult life, and I've discovered so many artists I adore. It's convenient, smooth, and genuinely brilliant at what it does. But I've started to wonder whether it's made me too comfortable. Streaming gives us the entire history of recorded music in our pockets, and that's incredible. But somewhere along the way, that abundance made it harder to really listen. I save albums I never return to. I skip songs I actually like. Music has become the constant hum in the background of my day rather than something I sit down and give attention to. A friend of mine recently started using an old iPod again. Well, technically new, just left unopened for years. She expected it to be a nuisance, all that dragging and dropping, the cables, no Wi-Fi. But a few weeks in, she said something that stopped me. I'm listening to music less in the best way. She's listening differently, with more intention than ever. I've talked about Spotify plenty over the years. The algorithms, the economics, the weird tension between discovery and evaluation. But maybe it's time to stop analysing it and just act differently. So I've cancelled my subscription as a user. Not in protest, just out of curiosity. I want to see what happens when I pay directly for the things I love, when I buy the record, download the album, or support the artist on their own terms. It's not about quitting Spotify in anger, although I should actually be angry. It's about putting my money where my mouth is. So I'm experimenting, starting with Qobuz, which I've been hearing great things about, and maybe building a little library of downloads. Perhaps I'll even rebuild my physical collection. Seeing your photos of Super Sexy Heartbreak, the vinyl, tucked between legendary records has made me so happy. I need to remember that music doesn't have to fill every moment. Over on my Patreon page, I've been recommending music whenever I find something rather special. Maybe this is what it means to fall in love with music again, slowly, deliberately, one album at a time. Spotify could be seen as the villain. Hell, it should be. But millions of users don't lie. It just did its job too well. So I think it's time for me to slow down and listen differently. If you've tried stepping away, or even just changed how you listen, I'd love to know what that's been like for you. Please respond directly to this email. Here's to whatever comes next. Sending so much love, Mary. So, that was the newsletter I sent. A quiet little note about slowing down. I thought I might get a few replies. Instead, you sent me a tidal wave. Hundreds of long, thoughtful emails, personal essays, confessions, mini manifestos, philosophical treaties disguised as inbox replies. You poured your heart out about nostalgia, about listening, about the sheer psychological tension of having every song in history available at every second of the day. Your messages genuinely changed how I see this whole experiment. And because I believe in crediting the people who shaped the conversation, I'm going to try and quote you all properly using your first names. So here's what you told me. These themes emerge from all corners of the world, different ages, different habits, different devices, yet somehow the same emotional undercurrent. So let's go through them. Number 1, streaming has made us lazy without meaning to. Keith B. wrote, "The system wants us to rent everything, including music. We need to buy music and cherish it." One listener told me his vinyl collection, a collection he'd spent years building, became wallpaper once Spotify arrived. Spotify didn't kill vinyl, it killed the ritual of vinyl. And the moment he quit streaming, he started listening to full albums again, start to finish. No grazing, no skipping, no drifting away. Music returned to being an event. Number 2, ownership matters again. Al B. described this perfectly. "I've never subscribed. I have the CDs I bought over decades. Get back to owning the music you buy physically." Another reader sat down and did the maths. £140 every year to rent access to music he barely hears. Buying the albums he actually loves would cost him less, and he'd own them forever. No algorithm, no subscription, no disappearing library, just permanence. Ownership became a small, hopeful act of resistance against digital drift. There's also the simple truth that many of us are already paying for more music access than we need. If you have YouTube Premium, YouTube Music is included, and the catalogue is huge. If you have Amazon Prime, Amazon Music is sitting there too. For a lot of people, Spotify becomes the third version of the same thing, a monthly payment for a convenience you're already getting elsewhere. So the minute you look closely at your subscriptions, you realise you might be paying for abundance you don't actually use. Number 3, discovery isn't happening where Spotify says it is. Beth G. from Ohio wrote, "I discovered your music on YouTube. I barely use Spotify at all." Ashley B. said something similar. "Music as background noise hasn't helped anyone. I found my way back by saying goodbye to streaming." Spotify claims to be a discovery platform, but so many of you said the same thing. Spotify recommends what you won't skip, not what you might love. Safe recommendations, predictable loops, emotionally tidy listening. Meanwhile, YouTube, messy, unpredictable. YouTube felt like a record shop. You're not discovering my music through my music. You're discovering it through me, through videos like this one. 4, the iPod renaissance is real. Multiple people, genuinely multiple, told me they're pulling out iPod classics, refurbished nanos, modded minis with flash storage, old MP3 players, Discmans, even Game Boy Advance adapters. Why? Because these devices have limits. No infinite scroll, no pressure, no 20 million track void, just you, a small library, and the world. Scarcity, imagine that, has become a luxury. 5, music turned into background noise, and people are rebelling. One programmer wrote me a beautiful line. Music had become a fog of constant noise. He barely registered anything anymore, but when he wanted to re-find my unreleased song 6,000 Miles, he had to search for it manually on YouTube for an acoustic demo version I'd made one evening. That small inconvenience jolted him into presence. He listened properly. He felt something. He remembered what listening used to mean. And then he wrote, "Sometimes accessibility kills the feeling." He's right. The ethics aren't helping. Several of you mentioned CEO bonuses, shrinking payouts, AI training on artist catalogues, podcasts being prioritised, environmental concerns, no transparency, the feeling that something is off. Lee C. put it plainly, Spotify monthly fees are way too high given how little they pay artists. You've made me think about cancelling. Even people who love Spotify feel uneasy. Last but not least, number 7, simpler listening makes people happier. Some of you listen to one album a night. Some buy 1 or 2 vinyl records a month. Some curate tiny MP3 libraries. Some re-rip CDs for fun. Some rediscovered the magic of listening as a whole experience. over and over, I read the same line. I listen to less music, but I listen better. This is the exact opposite of what streaming platforms want. Look, there are real benefits to streaming. When someone recommended Brandi Carlile's album recently, I clicked once and I had the whole thing downloaded, her latest album, for a long drive. I listened consciously. It was glorious. Streaming is convenient. It's fast. It's frictionless. Many of you are on family plans, kids sharing playlists, passing down music, discovering songs together. That's beautiful and quite cost efficient. You shouldn't give that up if it works for you. I'm not telling anyone to leave Spotify. I'm telling you why I don't need it anymore. Because I'm a listener, yes, but I'm also an artist. If I had relied solely on Spotify, I wouldn't even have made back 5% of what my album cost to make. Not even close. The only reason Super Sexy Heartbreak exists at the quality it does is because you guys bought physical copies. The physical album made the album possible. You made the album possible. If I had relied on Spotify's payments, I'd be deep in debt. So it raises the obvious question, why am I not buying more physical albums? It makes a significant difference to my peers. Also, you're not going to find AI artists making physical records and selling them in independent shops or on their websites. They don't press vinyl, they don't create CDs, they don't design artwork with an artist, obsess over sequencing, or argue with a mastering engineer about the noise floor on side B. That entire world, the world of craft, intention, scarcity, and physical presence, simply doesn't exist for them. AI music is made to live only inside streaming platforms, where volume matters more than vision and background noise earns more than artistry. Physical formats expose the difference. Real artists make records. Synthetic ones make zeros and ones. That alone should tell us where the soul of music still lives. So what does this all mean? When I sent that newsletter, I wasn't trying to spark a movement. I wasn't quitting Spotify in a blaze of moral purity, though honestly, that would be justified. I wasn't trying to drag anyone into my new lifestyle. I'm curious. I was curious. But now, something is shifting in how we listen. A quiet rebellion, a gentle turning back towards slowness, toward intention, toward ownership. People aren't running away from streaming. They're remembering that music is an experience, not a feed, a relationship, not a utility, a world, not wallpaper. Spotify didn't technically do anything wrong. It just did its job too well and reshaped everything. When you have 276 million paying users a month, of course you leverage that power. So now, many of us are wondering, what happens if we take back a little control, a little friction, a little humanity? My experiment continues, and thanks to you all, your words, your stories, your honesty, I've never been more excited to listen to music again, properly, slowly, one album at a time. So, have you ever had a moment where a platform you depend on suddenly reminds you that you don't own anything in your digital life? Spotify's price goes up, payouts barely move, and yet somehow I'm still apologising to a robot for skipping my own favourite albums. It's convenient, but it isn't built by or for the artists who fill it. So let me show you the opposite. There is a streaming platform out there that's actually creator-owned, built specifically so we can make the work we care about and share it without compromise. There, you may find my most thoughtful, in-depth films live, the ones that don't quite fit in my Spotify ruins my attention span ecosystem. My exclusive film, The Making of Songbook, is there. The full behind-the-scenes story of recording 26 songs in one summer and turning them into 2 albums. No ads, no edits for runtime, just the whole journey. And it's exclusively on Nebula. And yes, it's the sponsor of this video. You can also watch the full version of the Dire Straits story, not the YouTube cut, with extended recollections from John Illsley and a proper deep dive into how a tiny South London band accidentally became a global giant. And the full Led Zeppelin documentary is on Nebula too, including my conversation with biographer Bob Spitz, going into all the messy humanity behind the myth. These are films you won't find anywhere else. Nebula is becoming a prestige home for originals, extended cuts, and thoughtful storytelling from hundreds of creators. Everything's ad-free, early access, and beautifully easy to watch. And because Nebula is creator-run, when you watch there, you're directly supporting the people who make the shows, not a giant middleman. It's the opposite of the 15-second royalty fractions world that Spotify has normalized. And now there's a new perk. Every new Nebula account gets a 3-day free trial, no payment info required. You can watch anything, including my documentaries, instantly. Since we're heading into the holidays, I also need to mention this. With my link, you can get 40% off Nebula Lifetime. That's $300 for lifetime access, normally $500. You can buy it for yourself or grab a lifetime gift card for someone else. You can also get 40% off the annual plan. That brings it down to $36 for the whole year, which is basically $3 a month. Just use the link or the QR code on screen. So if you want to watch the making of Songbook, the Dire Straits story, Led Zeppelin, and a ton of incredible Nebula originals, hit the link below, scan the QR code, and start watching now. Thank you for clicking on this video. Thank you for watching to the end. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And as always, I'll be seeing you here again very, very soon.